And I'm a little bit incensed by that, to be honest. I'm what you might call a mum and dad developer. I've got a couple of blocks in Mangawai, and mainly want to develop these bits of land for my family. The economics in the world is not that great. Kids coming through can't afford a house. So that's the kind of point of view that I'm taking on this. Now, there's two arguments about this thing. One is on our day, of course, by the way, it was known as a Parks contribution. Now you call it development contribution, that's fine. But apparently it's going to be increased to 64,000. Now, I worked it out and I've put it in my submission that average price in a section of Mangawai, and I've checked this with a real estate agent, is about $500,000, which means that the original figure that I was looking at a few years ago was 23,000. It's about just under 5%. To go to 64 is going to take it to about 13% or more. And there's two parts to it. One, I don't believe that the developers in this area should have to pay for the council stuff up, because this is money that's coming to the council to cover the debt of this sewerage scheme that was done 10, 15 years ago. And I don't believe that's right. The council made it on behalf of all ratepayers in Mangawai, and all ratepayers in Mangawai should pay for it equally. Just the same as your rates should be equal across the board as well. Shouldn't be whether you've got a flash house or what have you. Everybody lives in a house. Doesn't matter whether it's flash or not flash. Everybody drives a car. Doesn't matter whether it's a flash car or a little car. There should be no difference. I don't believe in that the rich should have to pay more than the poor, so to speak. Everybody that lives in the area has got to contribute equally. Otherwise, go live somewhere else. It's simple. It's exactly the same ruling as fencing. If one member wants a fence between their property and the neighbour's property, you have to have a fence. Simple, straightforward. The impact may not have so much effect on large developers. They've got plenty of money behind them. But I suggest to you that it does. What it does is it puts up the cost of sections. It also drives away infrastructure or development, in this area. And the council doesn't do the infrastructure. Most developers put in the roads, they put in the lighting, they put in the sewer and the wastewater and everything else. There's no cost to council in that area whatsoever. The council, yes, they hook into the council mains. The main should be suitable for whatever development is on the horizon. Not, we're going to make you pay for it because you've got, a few extra sections coming in. We also, by them doing development, they create ratepayers, which means your income can get bigger. Your wages can get bigger. The money you can spend in the area gets bigger. If you start increasing these fees, and they are ridiculous even now. I'll give you an example. I did a resource consent for a property I've got. It cost me about $30,000. Now you got to think about that. That's permission from the council on my land. Permission. Now, that's, as a mum and dad developer, that's a lot of money. I found that a lot of money. It may not be for a big developer who'll just add on a couple extra thousand on every section. They're doing 30, 40 sections, 50 sections, whatever. They'll just add on another couple of thousand. That's fine. But as I said, these things don't do any good for the community. They're a hindrance. And if you people think that you're doing the right thing, you're sadly mistaken. Because as I first felt when I first read it, I thought, this is one of those things you read and think you can't believe the stupidity that's behind it. It's somebody is suggesting something that is absolutely daft. And I think if you ask the community, they'll say the same thing. So 5 minutes isn't really enough time for me to argue things. I've got 100 things I could put out about what you guys do and don't do. You know, maybe you need a better consultation process. But my argument today is that development contribution needs to be, make it a percentage. That way, if the price of things go up, the percentage goes, the money you get goes up because the percentage stays the same of an increased value. So therefore it gets an automatic increase in money without making it a ridiculous figure like 15%. That's worse than GST.
Thanks for your speaking to your submission. Now we go to questions from the panel. Do we have any questions from the panel?
I'll start. Thank you, Gregory. I guess, you know, there's potentially some confusion. There's your outrage there. Are you aware of the elements that go towards contributing to what we call DCs?
No. Yeah, I asked the council the other day when somebody spoke to me about this meeting and that, I said, well, send me the data on how the council calculate the figures. And they said, oh, I don't have anything I can send you.
Because it is, you know, all of these are based on actual costs. That it's going to cost.
Just questions, thank you.
Actual cost.
Clarifying.
But why would it cost $64,000 for the council for a section?
Well, I've put it in terms of a question, so it's not that easy. Why would it cost 64,000?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I can answer that, but I can't answer it as a question. Sorry.
Are you aware that the wastewater charges for properties within the drainage district or the wastewater system, that if you're in the countryside, that you're not going to be required to pay that?
No, I don't know. But like, for example, in my section, there's a previous developer that's put in a road and a sewage system and so on. So I can't see how, under those sort of circumstances, when developers are doing that there is a substantial cost to council.
So you're not connected to the Mangawhai wastewater system?
I'm not at
Roman.
No. I've got two properties, one's rural and one's in the residential area. And the residential one is the one I'm trying to develop. And there's already been a previous developer and they've done, I don't know, 30 sections, we'll say. And they've put in a road, lighting, sewerage, stormwater, whatever's required. And they have provided me with a pipe at my boundary to connect the sewer up and do my development. As I said, that to me means that the developer has done all the work, apart from the mains, which are the next road over. And all that sewage scheme will connect into the mains. So
that is that a connection to the Mangawhai system?
I believe it is, yeah.
It's not your own, it's not the own system amongst the...
It's not mine. I'm connecting into a system. I don't know whether it's operational yet or not. Council weren't able to tell me. This development's been going on for years. I mean, you know, COVID put 2 years in there and stopped everybody doing everything for some substantial period. But the development, you know, everything at the moment is at a bit of a standstill because nobody's buying anything. There's no land being sold, you know, so there's nothing much happening. But the system has been, over the last 3, 4, 5 years, they've developed the land near me, and I believe it's hooked into the mains on the next street over. So, as I said, that developer has done all that work, and I can't see anything that the council has done apart from mains connection.
Okay, hey, thank you very much for your submission. Thank you very much for your submission. Thanks, Vic.
I'm a bit deaf, sorry. You got to shout at me.
More on the phone. What you want us to do now? If she goes through and.
Yep.
Okay, so we actually need a motion to confirm the agenda. I'm happy to move that. Second, please. Thank you. All those in favour?
Yep.
Against, motion carried. They also need a conflict of interest declaration. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? No, thank you. And then we have, do you want this now or do you want this at the conclusion?
No.
Yeah, okay, so we also have a motion for the development contributions policy.
Sorry, to
Hearings package, and that motion is that the development contributions review policy panel receives the 28 submissions on the development contributions policy 2025 and hears the submitters who wish to be heard. Happy to move that. Can I have a seconder, please?
second.
All those in favour? Against? Motion carried.
That's what happens now. When we do have a speaker on.
Greg Moore. Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Greg Moore. Can you hear us, Greg?
Yeah, loud and clear. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much. Thanks for coming to speak to us. So you are before a panel of myself, Jonathan Lunt, Deputy Mayor. To my left is Mike Howard, who is a councillor, and online is the third panel member, which is Councillor Gordon Lambeth. And you have 5 minutes to speak to your submission, which we've read, and then there is up to 5 minutes for questions from the panel. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm late. Basically, I want clarity around the contributions, development contributions. They are quite easy to challenge in other jurisdictions, and I think it's a prime opportunity for Kaipara to get it right and make them less challengeable, and to also direct the funds to the right places, I suppose. I am all about getting things right and for the betterment of the go forward. So I've actually made a number of submissions to councils around the place. But yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say, but I said I'd be a submitter to join the process. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any questions of the panel for Greg?
Greg, I'll start. Mike Howard. I'm interested, you've detailed there in point 1, the summary in clauses 37, 40 is high level. Can you elaborate?
Elaborate on what point was it? Sorry.
Well, your point 1, insufficient transparency. You relate to clauses 37 and 40.
Sorry.
What are your specific issues with those?
My specific issues with all of it is a lack of. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my submission. I've had a hectic morning. It's just the lack of clarity. Hang on. Sorry, found it. It's my point one. You say my point one?
Yeah, you've got,
Insufficient transparency in the methodology.
yep,
It's just not clear how the charges are arrived at and what they're for. To be blunt,
okay,
it's easy to. I know. I work with a bunch of developers. None that I work with, but I know of developers that have gone to councils having received their development contributions invoices and said these aren't valid. Stick it, in want of a better term. They've sent a lawyer's letter and got 30, 40, 50% discount off the development contributions invoice because their lawyers fight that they can't stick. So I suppose what I'm saying here is there needs to be clarity in the methodology because then it's unchallengeable.
okay,
And it makes it clearer for developers as well on what they are expected to contribute and why. I think I cited in here the TransPower process. If you put in if you do a development and it's the last one, like you're gonna trip the transformer to the next level, you have to pay for that transformer to go in. Does that make sense?
yeah. It could well be, I don't know. That's just a specific.
So, like an example may be the race course. If that development was to go ahead, the development contributions for that would be crystal clear. You're going to put in X sites, which will be X dwellings. The development contribution costs will be as follows because that's the needed infrastructure. So it can't be pushed back on or challenged exactly, but then also the developer has that clarity as well.
Okay,
Did you have any further questions? No? Okay, thank you very much for coming and speaking to us. And we will go through our deliberations subsequently. Thank you.
Brilliant. Sorry, I was late.
Okay, next up we have strategic property. So we have,
We're at just at here.
yeah, just stays fine. Thank you very much.
You? Morning. So I take it from the last two submissions that you've read what we've said. So I guess probably just more than anything else, we just want to relay a conversation to councillors that we had last week with your council officers just regarding a little bit of an off-the-cuff kind of comment, but I think it goes to the underlying challenge that there is in the development contributions this year. The comment was made that they were seeking from us confirmation of the number of sections and the timing of delivery coming into Mangawhai Central so that they could then update the model that goes to talk about the wastewater. Now, we sort of said, well, that's a bit strange. You know, you've just sent out your development contributions policy, and in your development contributions policy, there's been forecast cost increases based on, we assume, a number of facts. The staff told us in the room that it was the modelling assumptions hadn't been updated since 2018. So if I just think about that for a second, 2018, Mangawhai Central's plan change hadn't been adopted yet. So I'm curious as to then in the modelling that, and modelling is the kind of the model and the costs go into that, which then has a Huey derivative that comes out of it that then leads to a cost per Huey going in, which then formulates the development contribution in kind of crude terms, right? But the ultimate costs that go into the model are the bit that then derives the cost at the end of it. So if those costs are wrong, if they are inflated, if they are escalated, and if they're not as robust as what we're thinking, then that in terms of timing as well, which leads to interest. And I think we probably want to bear in mind that at the moment of the wastewater component, 32% of the cost is interest. Like that's a lot of money sitting in some escalation and interest assumptions. And I don't know if it's escalation and interest or escalation, all that combined as one number. So probably our submission is we really challenge councillors when you're making this deliberation that we think you want to go back and ask some questions as to how all of these assumptions in that model has actually come to pass, because it is a big number and it is a big increase. We're talking about $91 million, of which there's 24 million predicted, but the balance of that is already spent and actual costs. Now, I don't know how much of that is interest. I don't know how much of that is like historic costs. I was about to say prehistoric, but we're not the dinosaurs. Historic costings as opposed to current costings. And it makes me wonder, and listening to the other two submitters, transparent equals uncontestable. And when we ask the questions in that, we no one could tell us what the modelling had gone into it. So what's the current cost to date versus interest captured to date? What's the Huey numbers? Because the Huey numbers that currently sit in the model don't reflect any kind of timing that we've communicated to council, which would also then imply to me that then the interest cost that goes in isn't based on any of those kind of facts that are coming at council. So I'm sitting here just going, gosh, there's a number of questions that I think would be reasonable to ask and reasonable to answer and get answers to, because transparent equals uncontestable. And I think to pass this today would be a bit of a, you open yourselves up to, and this is not a threat. I'm not sitting here threatening. I'm just sitting here questioning, right? Because a number of other councils have had the same challenge where, to be fair to the team putting this together, you're dealing with a whole lot of assumptions based on things you largely can't control, but you can control cost estimates. You can identify what's a cost versus what's escalation versus what's interest. You can break all that down and you can make that, sorry? You can make those robust modelling calculations, and that can happen. That's reasonably easily done. You then need to overlay it with the Huey assumptions, and then that's going to back into the other assumptions. But as at today, and what's sitting in your policy doesn't seem to make sense to us, and we would then suggest that to adopt the numbers that there are today would open yourselves up to some kind of challenges. And certainly down in Auckland, they have seen that firsthand, where the model assumptions that were there, when that has been questioned, escalation and interest were huge components of it. And when they were questioned, those numbers came down dramatically. Like Tamaki's dropped away about $60,000 per Huey because their modelling was wrong. So all we're saying is we would really encourage council to make sure you've got a robust and defendable model. I've probably got about 10 seconds, but there we go.
Thank you for summarising that. That's excellent, Jo. When you had this meeting that you've referred to, who did you meet with?
So we met with Lloyd Barton, Kelsey Newman, Melissa, is it Parlane, and
there was maybe
the guy from Parks. I'm not quite sure.
Andrew, maybe?
Andrew
Martin?
might be. It was on screen, so sorry. It's always harder to remember the people you meet online.
Martin, yep.
Yeah.
So that meeting was just last week.
Yep.
So this
Last Thursday.
is very, okay.
Yeah. And if I may, the reason I raise that now is because these were questions we did actually ask through our submission process. So when the LTP was released, because we understand we've got to pay some money, right? Somewhere along the line, and that there's cost of infrastructure, and that money has got to be paid by someone in the process, and ultimately the person who builds a house needs to contribute somewhere in there. But in doing that, you just need to make sure that number is fair. So we said, well, can you send us the model? Can we understand the inputs? Can we just check what that is, because we've been following with interest, and I grew up with development contributions, so have had a lot of experience in this, and have watched North Shore City Council be challenged in the Neil Group decision that went to the Environment and judicial review there back in sort of about 2006. And then more recently down in Auckland, the Drury contributions and also the Tamaki contributions were significantly challenged by a group of developers. Again, just saying, we don't disagree that there's got to be some money paid, but you need to make sure that the model inputs were robust. And in that case, particularly in Tamaki, that number went down dramatically because of the escalation provisions. So escalation and growth and interest payments have got to be,
And contingency.
have got to make sure that they're reasonable and relevant, and they follow the track of the growth through.
When you're talking escalation costs.
Yep.
Are you talking about just the actual increases from one period to another, or are you talking about assumed?
I'm talking assume. So let's just say that the wastewater module, for example, costs $2 million, and the team can say that module will be $2 million today, but we don't need it for maybe 5 years, right? Which would be a reasonable thing to say, right? And I'm not contesting that. What they would then do is say $2 million needs an escalation provision. So they might say that $2 million is likely to be, let's say, 2.5, right? But then on top of that, they then say, but we might need a contingency in case shipping goes up or there's not availability or whatever. So they might make it 3. They then are going to put an interest assumption sitting over that for when they've got to borrow the money to when it gets paid back. So you've got your $2 million is then going to 3, which is then getting interest put in, which is then getting when is the timing coming in with the growth and stuff. And what they found in Tamaki was that there was so much of the development contribution was the pluses on top. And that's where it's all, there's a bit of art and a bit of science to it. So we're not saying it's a perfect science, but but it was in that number that they realised that the cost escalation had gone up significantly, and that was increasing the cost of Kiwi today and the DC component today. That wasn't necessarily as accurate as one would hope.
Okay, so did you leave the meeting with a clear request that was understood?
Yep.
The council to come back to you?
No, they wanted us to go back to them to confirm numbers of sections in each of the parts of the development, so that then it could go into the new model, which WSP are doing. Yep, WSP are about to engage on a modelling process, as we understand. And WSP, so, I'm not denying there's a model in existence today, but what I'm questioning is how relevant and robust are the assumptions in that model today, if we're now being asked to put new numbers into it, then, and how much it's been updated since 2018. That's what I'm asking. And I certainly, through our process of asking the questions through this process, and then the subsequent meeting last week, I'm not satisfied that there is sufficient robustness in that process to then be able to hand on heart say that the money that is allocated to the Hueys is a reasonable number.
Joe, did you request the model? You said you requested.
We did, yeah.
And were you provided with the model?
We were provided with a model, yes, and then, but the model doesn't, it gives you some assumptions, but one of the things we asked was a table, which is on page, which is numbered pages, the current, you see there we asked for the costs and interest to date, we asked for this to be filled out. So cost to date and interest component to date to make up the current $41,000, and then we had the forecast one. So what we're saying is, and I think one of the earlier submitters made the point, we don't know what the wastewater cost has been to date. Like, has it been, say, $30 million? But then council has incurred interest over that over the period of time, which then make it, say, $40 million. This is what we were asking for, because some of that component doesn't relate to future growth, and development contributions are meant to reasonably relate to future growth, not past growth.
And so you requested this information here about a week ago?
No, we requested it as soon as the policy came out.
Okay, so a month or something.
It was a
Yeah.
couple of weeks before the submission was due. I mean, there was a bit of back and forth with Michael Webster, obviously he's on the call.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think part of on top of the interest split, the other issue is we haven't been able to sort of be provided with elemental breakdowns of these major costs. We're sort of saying there's $24 million of cost coming. what's the breakdown, what's, you know, where's the sort of the back, these numbers are just sort of hard coded into the model. So it's a model, but it's you just knock there about the assumptions.
There's also then, by the fact there's 24 million of future costs, there's about 65 million of past costs, and very quick maths. So, you know, like, again, how much of that relate to future growth versus current previous growth assumptions? And then, you know, again, we get it's not a perfect science and we're not trying to beat everyone up. We're just saying, again, there needs to be a level of transparency so that people can confidently say, yes, that's a fair and reasonable cost.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
No.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.
No problem at all. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
So that brings us to the end of our speakers. Do we have any other questions that we made here? Okay, thank you. I declare the hearing closed.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not coming.
Just